We got a couple videos, probably like 2 or 3 videos, 2 for sure. This first video I want to watch though is called Evil Human Experiments that Actually Happened. Not gonna lie to y'all. This is some shit that I would watch by myself. Like in the car, on a road trip, some shit like that. This is something that I would fucking watch. I'm not gonna lie to you. So yeah, this is peak fucking interest for me.
The CIA knew that it was breaking, every moral, ethical, and legal law in the books to do these experiments.
The most embarrassing aspect of the whole story was that the final results for this cruel test were not even noteworthy.
He says he's not going to go on. Please continue.
He says he doesn't want to go on.
We must continue.
Today, experiments have...
Experimentation and torture have to be like my top 2 fears. Like top 5 fears, honestly, no funny shit. Like when I was taking my best friend to, we were driving to Vegas from Chicago, me from Indiana, and there were these back roads where there's no lights for like 10, 15 miles at a time. There's no lights. I'm thinking like, damn, if somebody really just wanted to like backdoor us and throw down a goddamn a little spike strip and just, torture us on some wrong turn type shit, they could absolutely do that. That is my biggest fucking fear. I don't think y'all understand how big of a fear it is to be tortured. It sounds like being tortured is so fucking unbearable.
strict rules to protect
Just the
people.
thought of it, I'm not gonna lie.
That wasn't always the case.
What's the word,
past
Karan?
researchers experimented on people without considering the consequences, and the damage often lasted a lifetime. In this video, we'll explore evil human experiments that actually happened, starting with the unsettling cases and ending with the most horrifying. So it is the new year, guys, and I want to encourage you guys to be the best version of yourselves you can be. And it would mean the world if you subscribe, and I promise to do my best to make the best videos I possibly can for you. I'm Visual Venture, and you are awesome.
Tap in with him.
For years, the
I heard about this one.
MKUltra experiment sounded like a made-up story.
Karan, what are you saying? I'm so confused. What are you talking about? What are you talking
Many
about?
believed it was simply too cruel to be real. But in 1973, the truth came out. Declassified CIA files confirmed that MKUltra actually happened, and it involved illegal human experiments.
It was the most secret program ever conducted by the CIA.
Torture is hot. Torture is hot is some of the craziest shit you could say. Imagine being tortured and somebody's like using pliers to pull your teeth out or rip off your nails, or like nigga, that shit is a fucking fear. Having my teeth ripped out, bro. Oh my God. You don't understand how bad of a fear that is. Like, nigga, just all the methods that these crazy ass, like, real people are crazy as fuck. All these methods that people have, bro. No, fuck no. I'm going to find a way to off myself before they could torture me. I'm going to find a way.
The worst part was not how extreme the experiments were. It was that people were forced to take part in it. MKUltra officially began in 1953. At that time, the CIA believed other countries were developing brainwashing and mind control techniques, but there was no evidence to confirm this. But the agency didn't want to fall behind, so they launched MKUltra. The goal was clear: find ways to erase the memory and then control the mind.
Can we actually control a person's personality? Can we make them behave in certain ways, make them do something?
MKUltra quickly grew into a massive operation. It included more than 150 separate projects. These projects took place in universities.
I heard about MKUltra. It's very popular. One experiment I do think will be on here, it's pretty popular, but it's not nearly as popular as MKUltra, is the Stanford experiment. I really hope that he puts this in here.
Hospitals, and even in public. And some of the methods were so inappropriate that keeping this a secret became necessary.
The CIA knew that it was breaking, every moral, ethical, and legal law in the books to do these experiments.
One of the CIA's main tools was mind-altering drugs. Researchers wanted to know whether dosing people made them easier to control.
Even people in the public were given drugs without their awareness or consent and experimented upon.
But secretly dosing people sometimes ended in disaster. Frank Olson's story is a perfect example. Olson was a scientist working with U.S. intelligence. In 1953, he attended a meeting with colleagues. During that meeting, the CIA spiked Olson's drink with a truth serum. He had no idea. Agents stood nearby and watched how it affected him. When the substance took effect, Olson became emotionally unstable. A witness described him as disoriented. The effect lasted.
Do y'all think it's a thing such as truth serum? Like, that don't sound crazy to y'all? Like, I think that sounds very, very crazy. I'm not gonna lie.
For days. 1 week
Like,
later,
I just don't think
Olson
something
was
like that can
staying at a
exist.
hotel. He suddenly woke up in the middle of the night and ran around the room in his underwear. Then he fell from a hotel window. He didn't survive. But Olson wasn't the only victim of MK Ultra. Many MK Ultra experiments took place in hospitals and psych wards. The patients were already vulnerable. Instead of receiving proper care, they were treated like guinea pigs. MK Ultra doctors wanted to learn how to erase memories.
And he thought that if you could bring a person back down to a blank slate, remove all the environmental inputs that have been put into them, and then you can build them back up in your image into whatever you want them to be.
The methods used were too extreme for me to describe. Many patients didn't understand what was happening. That
What's
made it
the
nearly
point in shit like
impossible
this,
for them
though?
to refuse. By the time patients were discharged, they were seriously affected. Experiments also took place in prison.
Like, I know it's gonna be like psychological, but like realistically, I just don't see the point in this. I mean, I guess people just want to rule the world. That's all that it is, I guess. Like, just to rule the world.
Inmates were
Just to
given
rule the world.
substances, and the reactions were closely monitored. The program continued
this
for
is
nearly
so
10 years,
inhumane.
and so many of the things they did were illegal.
They were also experimenting with aerosol LSD. Like, can we disperse it into a crowd? Can we disperse it over a city? What does it do in water supplies? And just some insane stuff.
In 1963, the CIA officially ended MK Ultra.
It's just
This
hard
was
to
the
believe that-
explanation recorded in
It's just hard to believe that a lot of this is like true. Like, why would they put this shit out there? Why would they put this out there?
inside the CIA director's office.
His office reported, "The concepts involved in manipulating human behavior are found by many people, both within and outside the agency, to be distasteful and unethical."
After the program ended, the CIA director ordered most MK Ultra files destroyed. The goal was to keep the experiments hidden, but that plan failed. A few years after it ended, a reporter found out about the program and blew the whistle.
In 1974, Seymour Hersh exposed the MK Ultra program when he wrote about it for the New York Times.
The article caused public outrage. Soon after, Congress launched an investigation. The CIA was forced to admit the truth.
During those hearings, the CIA finally admitted that this program existed. They admitted that it was probably
Chat. My girl's dog is in here fucking howling again, bro. Earlier when she left for work, I took a shower and this nigga was howling, dog. And now he's fucking howling again. Here he comes. This shit is so funny, bro. Like, he's a little ass chihuahua howling, bro. He's a little ass chihuahua, bro. He's fucking howling. It is so fucking funny.
not the right thing to do, but they feigned innocence.
By then, most of the records were destroyed. That meant the full scope of MK Ultra would never be known, and victims were left without justice. Up next is an experiment that intentionally instilled fear in people. The Landis Facial Expression Experiment. In 1924, a psychologist, Carney.
This sounds like some crazy shit. Like, it'll be like the inspiration behind like the Smile or the Smile movie or some shit like that. That's really what this sounds like.
Landis began a study on human reactions. He wanted to know if everyone makes the same face. when they feel the
Nice.
same
15
emotion,
stream
like fear,
streak. You know what's crazy is because you lost your streak, but now you're on a 15 stream streak again. That's insane.
disgust, and so on. I mean, it was a reasonable question, but in trying to find the answer, Landis created one of the most horrifying experiments ever, and those who suffered most were his test subjects. Landis recruited young college students for the study. On paper, the plan was simple. He was going to trigger
College
emotions like
students?
disgust and joy and capture them on camera.
These are not college students. This better not be no college student, bruh. This look like an ugly ass 10-year-old. I'm not gonna lie.
So he needs to get you to feel emotions to get a picture of your face.
The first thing he did was paint thick black lines across each volunteer's face. He said the markings would help track facial expressions in photos. Next, he mounted a camera on the wall. It was positioned to capture everything. At this point, it still looked like a normal psychology study, but things were about to get dark. Landis wanted to see the face people made when they felt uncomfortable. To trigger that reaction, he showed volunteers a set of unsettling images.
Stop.
Then he shows
Stop.
you medical photos of people with
No.
horrendous skin conditions.
The volunteers were clearly distressed, and the camera recorded every reaction. Next, Landis moved on to fear.
Then he
Respectfully,
goes behind the
I'm one of
curtain
them.
and sets off a firecracker to capture on film the exact moment of your fright.
He didn't just use firecrackers. Landis also fired a weapon close to the volunteers. Once again, his goal was to capture the exact moment of their fright. Then the experiment escalated. Landis told the volunteers to close their eyes and stick their hands into a metal bucket. Inside, they felt something slimy. The bucket was full of live frogs, kicking and squirming. Landis recorded their expression.
This
But he
don't
wasn't
sound like
finished.
nothing
He
crazy.
instructed them to search the bottom of the bucket for an object.
So after searching for through all these frogs for some time, finally the
That's so far. Nothing about this experiment sounds too crazy. So far, you know, having people do the bucket thing, I don't really see too much of an issue with that. But I guess as we go on with this experiment, they're going to tell us more and more exaggerated shit.
participant found their surprise.
Their hands touched a live electrical coil. An electrical shock ripped through their bodies.
Bro,
So the participants were
there you
also
go.
getting
Live electrical
time.
bucket for an object.
So after
But he wasn't finished. He instructed them to search the bottom of the bucket for an object.
searching for
I think
through
I
all
spoke too
these
soon.
frogs for some time, finally the participant found their surprise.
Their hands touched a live electrical coil. An electrical shock ripped through their bodies.
So the participants were also getting shocked by that time, and that time they were facial expressions were also recorded.
Still, Landis wasn't satisfied. He wanted stronger reactions. Landis brought out a small
For
mouse.
what,
It was
though?
alive. Then he
I'm not
ordered
understanding
each
this.
volunteer to end the mouse.
And if they didn't, he would do it for them in front of them while they watched.
Almost everyone asked Landis if he was joking. They quickly realized he wasn't. Landis wanted to take a photo of their faces as they carried out the act. Many volunteers refused at first, but
So
Landis pressured
nobody,
them one by one.
nobody in the logical adult world was like, "Hey, let's not do this. Why don't we not do this? Because is that not fucking insane? This is pretty insane, in my opinion, to sit there and fucking." I just don't see how other people are letting this shit go out. I really don't.
Most of them gave in. About 1/3 refused to do it themselves, but Landis didn't let them off the hook. Landis did it himself. He made them watch. The camera clicked again and again. The experiment was over. Now it was time to assess the results. After triggering all of these emotions, Landis reviewed the photos, and he found no clear pattern. There was no typical facial expression for any emotion. Fear, disgust, and shock looked different from person to person. In fact, smiling was the most common reaction even during unpleasant experiences.
Yeah.
When Landis published his findings, many people criticized how the volunteers were treated. The part involving the mouse caused the most outrage. That's why today, the Landis facial expression experiment is remembered for its cruelty, not its science.
To be fair, I definitely thought that this experiment was going to be a whole lot worse. I feel like he could have took it further. I thought it was going to go further than just a mouse. But I feel like this is like, they experiment on mice all the time. I feel like this was just like, it's a way to get emotion out of people. But I feel like if you want the most emotion out of people, you have to take it a step further. I think you got to take it a step further.
Up next is an experiment that had lasting consequences on a child. The Little Albert experiment. Fear
Alright, I
is
ain't
a
never heard of that
survival
one.
tool. It warns us when danger is near. But for decades, psychologists argued about where fear comes from. Are we born with it, or does the world teach us what to fear? In 1920, two researchers decided to stop debating and find out for themselves. They wanted to train someone to fear something specific, even if that thing was harmless. Before the experiment could begin, they ran into a major issue. They couldn't use adults. Adults already have memories and life experiences, so they know what's scary and what isn't. The researchers needed
Children
someone with no
are scared of
sense what
everything,
could be
damn
scary.
near.
Ideally, they needed a baby. The researchers eventually found a baby in the hospital where they worked. His mother was a nurse at the same hospital. The baby's real name was never recorded. In the study, he was called Albert B. Albert was only 9 months old. The researchers planned to teach him fear. To do this, they used a method called classical conditioning. Here's the concept. If you pair something harmless with something frightening, the brain may link the two. If you repeat that pairing in
Where's the mother? Was the mother okay with this? Because, nigga, there is no possible way that you're getting a sane newborn from a mother and she's okay with y'all running experiments on her kid like this. I don't buy this. I'm not going to lie. I think that they did something to that mother and they took the kid. I don't feel like, I don't think that they just like asked for consent or some shit like that. I don't think so. I highly doubt it.
enough times, the brain learns a new rule. This object means danger. The researchers decided to test this idea on little Albert. They began by showing him a white lab rat. Albert showed no fear. He tried to touch the rat. Next, they showed him a rabbit, a dog, and a monkey. None of the animals frightened him.
First, as you see here, the investigators
You're talking about a child right now. You're talking about a child.
Little Albert had no fears of any animals.
At that point, the scientists needed a way to trigger fear. They struck a steel bar using a hammer. The noise startled Albert and he burst into tears. Now they knew what made him scared. The researchers showed Albert the rat again. He smiled and reached for it just like before. At that exact moment, they made the loud noise again.
In the conditioning phase of the study, which was not filmed, the investigators struck a steel bar with a hammer whenever Albert reached for a rat.
Albert heard the noise and cried.
But did they need to do this? You can just live a normal life and understand understand this shit. Simply because, let's just say you have a parent that's disciplining their child. After a child does something and the parent disciplines them, give them a slap on the wrist, give them a whooping, or whatever the case is, that child is going to know not to do it regardless of the reason, because they're going to see that there's pain or consequences behind that certain action. I don't think they needed to run an experiment on this shit. I feel like that's just logical common sense.
To strengthen the connection, they repeated the process. After several rounds, the scientists finally got the result they wanted. Albert didn't need to hear the noise anymore. Seeing the rat alone made him cry.
The investigators believed that the child's reaction during this trial demonstrated his newly acquired fear of white rat.
They successfully taught a baby to fear something specific, but the experiment wasn't over yet. The researchers wanted to see if Albert's fear would transfer to similar objects. So they placed a rabbit in front of Albert. It was white and furry, just like the rat. Albert cried. Next, they brought in a dog and a monkey. He cried again. It seemed Albert was scared of anything soft, white, or furry. They even showed him a Santa Claus beard, and he burst into tears. The researchers planned to remove the fear later, but they never got the chance. Albert's mother suddenly left the hospital with her child. Maybe she realized something was wrong. No one knows.
Yeah,
for sure.
what the fuck? How the fuck do you not know this? What type of parent was she? What type of parent were you to not know that they're doing experiments on your child? Because this is not no 1-2-step process, nigga. This is a long ass process to do some shit like this, to run experiments. You have to know that they're doing something to your child. Like, is your child just in like daycare while you work and they're doing this? Then okay, I understand. You think your child is somewhere, but they're not where you think they are.
What we do know
Other
is
than that, nigga, this shit don't make no
Albert never
sense.
received treatment to reverse the fear. For decades, Albert's identity remained a mystery. Researchers only knew he was born around 1919. Finally, in 2014, investigators believed they finally identified him. They concluded that he was a man named Albert Barger. They wanted to interview him, but they
Albert?
couldn't.
So his real name was
already passed
Albert.
away at the age of 87. Instead, they spoke with his family. They described Albert as gentle and calm, but there was something strange about him. Albert couldn't stand being around animals. It was so bad that family members had to keep their dogs in a separate room when he visited. If Albert Barger was really little Albert, it's possible that the fear from the experiment never faded. The little Albert experiment showed that fear can be learned through classical conditioning, but the fact that they used a baby was just wrong. This next case answered the question,
classical
how
conditioning
easily
is
can you
crazy.
make a good person do bad things?
Because I mean, honestly, I just feel like a lot of these are common sense. Like this last experiment was just common sense. Like you didn't have to experiment to know some shit like that. All it takes is, it's like pattern recognition to an extent.
The Milgram shock experiment. Most people believe they are good. In the early 1960s, psychologist Stanley Milgram decided to test that belief.
Stanley Milgram was interested in the psychology of obedience.
Milgram designed an experiment to answer one dark question. Can a good person be pressured into doing something evil simply because their leader or boss orders them to? Milgram's question was inspired by the events of World War II. After the war, many people involved in horrific crimes were put on trial. Almost all of them gave the same excuse. They were just following orders. As a psychologist, Milgram found this blind obedience deeply troubling. He wanted to know if ordinary Americans could also be pressured to hurt others.
I mean, of course, you get the, I think it varies. If you get a motherfucker with like good integrity and good heart, they're not going to do it. They'd rather off themselves or take the consequences of not performing such action rather than doing something bad to somebody else. I'm one of them people, I'm not gonna lie. Like if you try to sit here and make me do something to somebody I care about or just a random stranger who has done nothing to me, I'm just gonna have to deal with the consequences because I'm not about to put somebody else's life in danger or hurt somebody else for the simple fact that you want to see somebody get hurt. You know what I'm saying? Or just for this experiment, like, I just feel like it's all situational. The short answer to this question is yes. You can get any random motherfucker to do some bad shit.
To see how subjects would react when a researcher pushed them to do things that went against their morals.
The first step was selecting volunteers for his experiment. He put out an ad offering $4 for 1 hour of their time. But Milgram turned away anyone with a violent history or criminal record. He wanted everyday people who knew right from wrong. Once the volunteers were selected, the experiment began. Milgram conducted the study at Yale University, but he lied to the volunteers about the purpose of the experiment.
Volunteers were told they were
which is fucked up. Like y'all are lying about this shit. I'm positive you can find some niggas who want to do some shit like this. There's people who want to do these experiments.
Wires connected the machine to a chair in the next room. Each volunteer watched as another man was strapped into the chair. Electrodes were attached to his body. Then a barrier was placed between them. From that moment on, the volunteer could not see the person in the electric chair. The instructions were straightforward. The volunteer would ask a question. The man in the chair would answer. If the answer was wrong, the volunteer pressed a switch and delivered an electric shock.
You're going to read these words out and see if he can remember them. And if he gets it wrong, you hit this button and deliver a shock.
But the shocks weren't all the same.
He was told to increase the voltage with each wrong answer.
That was the task. Press a button and shock another person for making a mistake. Milgram wanted to see how far volunteers would go before they refused.
Cloud, horse, rock, house. Answer. Wrong.
Each shock triggered a reaction from the man in the chair.
Answer. Wrong. 150 volts.
However, there was
these niggas was purely evil. This shit was just pure evil, bro.
He wasn't actually being shocked. His reactions were fake.
You ain't subbed
As the
up.
experiment continued, the actor yelled to stop.
Experiment, that's all. Get me out of here. Get me out of here, please. All right. I refuse to go on. Let me out.
At this point, the volunteers hesitated.
He says,
but I just don't. I don't know. It's weird what I want to say.
He says he doesn't want to go on.
we must continue.
But the researchers insisted they continue.
The experiment requires you continue, teacher. Please continue.
And most volunteers did. They felt they were doing something wrong, but they kept pushing the button.
So the guy keeps getting it wrong. Around 250 volts, he's screaming.
Some volunteers strongly protested.
I'm not going to kill that man there. I mean, who's going to take the responsibility if anything happens to that gentleman?
I'm responsible for anything that happens here. Continue, please.
Eventually, the man in the other room went.
And it's crazy because these people are doing this under like no threat. Like in this video, he's doing these He's doing this under no threat. Like, there's no reason to be doing this, and literally nobody is threatening you, bro.
Silent.
I think something's happened to that fellow in there. I don't get no answer.
At that point, the experiment ended. Milgram published the results in 1963.
2/3 of volunteers were prepared to administer a potentially fatal electric shock when encouraged to do so.
In total, 65% of volunteers went all the way to the maximum 450 volts. That meant that if the shocks were real, they would have ended the person in the chair.
I think they just wanted to do this shit just to do it. I'm not gonna lie. I definitely think they just wanted to do this shit just to do it.
They just have to be told to do it.
Decent American citizens were as capable of committing acts against their conscience as the Germans had been under the Nazis.
This next case shows how you can cause permanent damage to someone by using only words. The Monster Study.
Are we not? I'm hoping they talk about
the people called it the Monster Study.
What's it
called? The study
called?
was created by Wendell Johnson. He was a respected professor at the University of Iowa. Despite his success, he lived with a deep personal struggle. Johnson stuttered a lot.
What is a train emote? I think the train emote is you started a hype train when you donated all them subs. So when you donated how many did you donate? 16 subs is because you did that.
Impediment that disrupts the normal flow of speaking. Back in the 1930s, doctors believed stuttering was caused by a biological defect. In other words, stutterers were simply born that way. But Johnson had
I think I heard about this. I think I heard about this one. I think I've heard about this.
Personal experience.
Apparently, he had spoken normally his whole life until the age of about 5 or 6, when a teacher told his parents that he was starting to exhibit a bit of a stutter.
That comment from his teacher was a trigger. Johnson became anxious about speaking. Over time, he actually developed a stutter.
Looking back, he concluded that it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. Had he not been so worried about not developing a stutter and so obsessed over his speech, he never would have become a stutterer.
Johnson wanted to prove that stuttering was caused by negative feedback, not biology. To do this, he needed kids he could study without interference. In 1939,
I definitely
Johnson
think
walked into an orphanage and told the staff a lie.
Stuttering is by
give the children speech therapy. The staff agreed that Johnson was there to help. Johnson ran the study with his graduate student Mary Tudor. Together, they selected 22 kids. Some were stutterers, others were not. The researchers divided them into 4 groups. The first group was made up of kids who already stuttered. The goal was to help them feel calm so that their stuttering stopped. So the researchers praised them all the time. Everyone in the second group was also a stutterer. In this case, the researchers wanted them to feel anxious so their stutter would worsen. Therefore, they were criticized constantly. The third group was full of children who spoke normally. They were praised and encouraged to keep speaking just the way they were. Then there was the final group. These children spoke perfectly before the study, but the researchers wanted to make them start stuttering. To achieve that, they were constantly criticized. They were accused of stuttering even when their words were clear.
They were told, you must try to stop yourself immediately. Use your willpower. Do anything to keep from stuttering. Don't ever speak unless you can do it right.
After that, the researchers recorded what happened to each group. The 2 groups that received negative feedback were deeply affected. The children who already stuttered became more anxious, and just like Johnson predicted, their stuttering got worse. But what about those the researchers were trying to turn into stutterers? Well, that didn't work. The criticism did not make them suddenly start stuttering. However, it shattered their self-confidence.
Every child
That's what I was gonna say, because I don't feel like stuttering, like belittling someone, is gonna make them stutter. I think it'll just make them think more. Like, that's just really all I think it is. You're just going to start thinking more. You're going to think about what you say more often and shit like that. I don't think it leads to... I don't think it is going to lead to you stuttering as like a permanent thing. Like, that doesn't make sense for it to be permanent, you know? Because if you're a kid or just a human in a natural situation, just a calm situation, you have no reason to stutter. But like, if you're nervous, you'll start stuttering, I believe. Outside of that, bro, I don't think that there's, you know, like, as he said, it didn't work.
In school, some of them refused to talk, even to their friends.
One was so distressed that she ran away from the orphanage. This clip sums it up well.
The children who were given negative feedback became more withdrawn, self-conscious, and frustrated, whether or not they actually had a stutter to begin with.
When Johnson shared the results with his colleagues, they were horrified. They warned him that publishing the study could destroy his career. According to reports, they were the ones who nicknamed it the Monster Study. Johnson never published the study. study. He hid the documents and hoped his actions would stay buried.
The children also weren't debriefed after the project was over, and there was no real follow-up on how they may have been affected by the study long term.
When Johnson...
I personally think that's one of the worst things about all these experiments is that there's no follow-up with any of these. Like, a lot of these are generally just, hey, let's fuck up some people. Let's fuck up their mental, possibly fuck up their physical. Let's just fuck up everything about them. Try to change who they are as a person and just leave it at that. Like, there was no end goal to this shit. There was nothing to really get out of this. Like, there was no help for these people. Like, it's just, all right, go home. Go on about your day. Like, that doesn't make sense to me.
He was praised as a respected professor. At that point, no one knew about the orphans, but that changed in 2001. A reporter uncovered records of the monster experiment. When the story became public, people were outraged. Some of the kids from the experiment were still alive. They were now in their 80s. Most claimed they struggled with anxiety and shame. The survivors sued the state of Iowa, which is where the study took place. In 2007, the state sued the state of Iowa, which is where the...
Nigga, is this Nebraska? You talking about they sued the nigga? This is Nebraska. Is that? Am I tweaking or is this not Nebraska, bro?
Study took place. In 2007, the state
OMG, it's my least favorite homie. Aren't you still stuck in iron, bro?
The monster experiment should have never
happened. Like, you're stuck in iron, ain't you?
This next experiment got so destructive, it had to be stopped early. The Stanford prison experiment.
Yeah! This is exactly what I was talking about. This is exactly what I was talking about. I'm so happy they brought this up because this is like one of my favorite experiments to know about.
This experiment was designed to create an atmosphere of oppression. The man behind it was psychologist Philip Zimbardo.
I will touch you.
For years, Zimbardo studied how people behave in prison.
Hey, somebody time that nigga out for 2 minutes.
In each place, he noticed the same pattern. People in power often treated others badly. Over time, Zimbardo formed a theory. People didn't commit cruel acts because they were born evil. They did them because the situation allowed it. Simply put, power can bring out the worst in people, but it was only a theory. To test it, he needed to create an environment where power could be abused. That idea became...
I'm crying. This nigga really timed him out. This nigga really timed him out. I'm crying. You was only supposed to give him a 2-minute timeout. You gave him 600 seconds. You gave him 10 minutes. You were supposed to time him out for 2 minutes.
The Stanford...
Chat, after this, I'm gonna take the dog out.
Built a makeshift prison in the basement of a college building. Cameras were installed to record everything that happened. He added cells, a prison yard, and a guards station. The goal was to make the prison feel real enough to shape behavior. Next, he selected 24 college students to take part in the 2-week experiment. Zimbardo split them up into 2 groups. One group became guards, the other became prisoners. To help the guards feel powerful, Zimbardo gave them whistles, batons, and mirrored sunglasses. The sunglasses...
Nigga, I don't even know how to reverse the timeout. I'm crying. I'm crying. How do I reverse this timeout? How do I reverse this timeout? Oh my God, I timed him out again. Okay, he's good now. He's good now. He's good. He's good.
Never told the guards.
Hey, Cam, my bad. These niggas is terrible. These niggas is terrible people, bro.
Watched what happened. The prisoners, on the other hand, were stripped of anything personal. They wore identical clothing that erased their individuality. Their names were replaced with ID numbers,
so that they would begin to think of themselves anonymously as numbers and no longer as people with names and identities.
From the start, the imbalance was clear. On the first day, the guards were polite and careful. They still saw the prisoners as fellow students.
Hands off the door.
Soon the mood began to shift.
On day 2, there was a very sharp change in the whole nature of what was happening in that prison.
The guards started raising their voices. Guards punished prisoners for minor mistakes. Their authority was settling in.
The guards then began to escalate their use of power. Some of them had prisons.
We're watching evil human experiments that actually happen. So shit like MK Ultra and shit like that. This one is the Stanford experiment where they took people from, I believe, the same age group. They put them in a prison system, a makeshift prison, and they got some guards, and then they got people being the prisoners And it was just an experiment to see if people in power, you know,
clean out toilet bowls with their bare hands.
If a prisoner resisted, they were locked in a small closet. This was their version of solitary confinement. Within the first 4 days, 3 prisoners were so affected that they were released. By the 5th day, the remaining prisoners looked exhausted. When they lined up for inspection, they seemed scared.
You see how we did that, boys? Yes, sir, Mr. Grant.
The guards acted differently too. They were now tyrannical. It seemed like they forgot
things
that they were
that made
students
you
in
got
an
it.
experiment. The situation was out of
It
control.
looked like I was
it
in
was
this
just
shit.
a matter of time before someone got hurt.
And at that point, we said, enough, we have to end this.
The experiment was scheduled to last 14 days, but Zimbardo shut it down on the 6th day. In 1972,
Damn.
Zimbardo talked about his experiment at conferences. He also released a film showing real footage of what happened. Public reaction was intense. Some people refused to believe the results. They argued that Zimbardo unknowingly selected people who were predisposed to authoritarianism. But others believed the experiment proved Zimbardo's theory. Normal people can change when placed into powerful or powerless roles. Decades later, the Stanford prison experiment is still debated. The consequences of this next experiment affected thousands of people.
Honestly, I think the Stanford experiment is like, do I condone the actual experiment? But I think it's valid though. I think if you give somebody some authority, let's just say you give somebody the slightest bit of authority or see them as a higher being, they're going to start acting like that. They're going to act like they're better and they're going to start doing shit that they normally just normally wouldn't do.
And lasted for decades. Project 4.1.
Okay, I haven't heard about this.
Project 4.1 was officially described as a medical study. Scientists wanted to understand how radiation affects the human body, but this experiment was never planned in advance. It began because of a disaster. In the early 1940s, the US set out to build the most powerful weapon ever created, a nuclear bomb. But there was only one way to know if they were on the right track. They needed to test the nukes they were making. Testing meant detonation. The military needed a remote location to blow stuff up without drawing attention. They chose the Marshall Islands in the Pacific Ocean.
The Marshall Islands is mostly made up of atolls, which are ring-shaped coral reefs with a lagoon in the middle.
But those islands weren't empty. People lived there. Nuclear testing in that region put the locals at risk. But the military moved forward anyway.
Between 1946 and 1958, the US carried out a series of nuclear tests, detonating 67 giant bombs in the Marshall Islands.
The tests continued for years. The explosions grew more powerful. It was just a matter of time before something went wrong. On March 1st, 1954, the military carried out another test.
The shockwave visibly roared across the ocean and hit the camera ship miles away.
But scientists miscalculated the strength of the blast. It was more than twice as powerful as predicted. A cloud of radioactive debris shot into the sky, and it drifted toward the nearby islands.
And then there was the wind. It blew in a different direction than what the scientists expected, and carried nuclear fallout to nearby populated islands.
On the ground, locals noticed something falling from the sky. It looked like powder.
My cousin Erosi, he was on top of a tree whenever the powder fell.
Kids played in the powder. Adults touched it. Everyone breathed it in. It got on everything.
There gotta be some type of like reparations for some shit like this, right? Knowing the US, it's not even remotely close to anything that they got. They probably was like, oops, my bad, and just went on about their day and said, fuck everybody on this island. That's something that the US would definitely do.
Clothing, food, and even toys that the kids played with. The exposure continued for days. They had no idea that it was toxic. After the fallout, the researchers faced a choice. They could warn the locals and evacuate them, or they could treat it as a research opportunity. Behind closed doors, military leaders and scientists made their decision. Instead of evacuating the locals, they decided to use them as test subjects. They called
My
it Project
dumbass.
4.1.
I mean, this is even worse. This is even fucking worse than what I thought it was. I thought they was just going to be like, oh, well, we're going to scope the scene real quick. But no, they let these motherfuckers live and then use them for experiments.
The US knew the danger that the contamination posed.
Hey, Karan, send me some bread so I get some food.
With the locals. As health problems began to appear, medical teams arrived on the islands. They claimed they were there to help, and they did provide some medical care. But in reality, they were mostly collecting data.
And after testing nuclear weapons on their islands, The US studied the Marshallese people without their consent.
The experiment continued for years. Findings from Project 4.1 were published in US medical journals. The health effects were studied, documented, and shared. Eventually, the Marshallese became their own nation.
The Marshall Islands gained its independence from the United States in 1979.
By then, many locals already understood they were harmed by the testing. In the 1990s, newly declassified documents revealed more details about Project 4.1. Finally, the world realized how the victims were treated as test subjects. The project was condemned worldwide. Some even believed the radiation exposure wasn't accidental and that it was premeditated.
I 1000% think this shit was on purpose. Like, we're talking about the fucking US. I'm pretty sure we're talking about the US. I've been in and out. I'm pretty sure we're talking about the US. Nigga, this shit was not accidental. It was not. Let's stop bullshitting. The US will do some shit, claim it was accidental, but it wasn't. Come on, man.
Sadly, decades later, many Marshallese people
let's
are still
be dead
living
ass.
with the effects of the blast. History taught us a lesson through these experiments. When we treat people like test subjects, we lose our humanity. My friends, progress should never come at the cost of innocent people's lives. So whatever you're building, make sure you're not destroying someone else to get there. Visual Venture. Wait to be.
I ain't gonna lie to you. All these experiments was unnecessary as hell. The nuclear one, that shit was on purpose. That shit was 1000% on purpose. I refuse to believe that shit was accidental. I fucking refuse to believe that shit was accidental. We're talking about the US here. You hear all these experiments and you think anything like that is accidental? All the shit that the US be doing, none of this shit is accidental, brother.